Hello, this is Dr. Janet Hall and I'm a sex therapist and psychologist here in Melbourne. And I recently had my very first counselling of a deaf couple. And I want to talk about how much I learned in working with them about how they see the world in a way that is just like you and me, or hearing people, but different. And how stretched it was for me, but also how rewarding it was for me to work with them. And they gave me permission to talk about them, and I'm not going to tell you who they are, but just imagine what it's like to be deaf, but born into a hearing family that everybody else in your family can hear. And as you grow up, depending on your family, you may be the one who's not heard. You can't make yourself heard in the same way. And in this case, both of the couple had come together, married and had children, and never really felt that they knew how to communicate with each other about sex. And yet it was kind of the typical stereotype situation where the man wanted more sex and the woman basically was far too busy. Now, of course, we had to have an interpreter who would basically be who the deaf couple would speak to, and then he would interpret with me. Now, I don't know about how you feel about talking about sex, but when there's somebody who's a total stranger who's just interpreting for you, it basically unnerved me a bit the first time. She was a lovely young woman, the interpreter, and she was able to keep herself totally objective and distanced, and yet very respectfully tell me what the deaf couple was saying. Now, I'll tell you the story of the couple. The woman wasn't that much interested in sex because she was brought up in a family where you didn't talk about it. And good girls didn't do it. That is, not unless they were married and had children perhaps of their own. And really, I guess because of their religious background and the fact that the mother never talked to the daughter about sex, she'd grown up thinking that it wasn't such a big deal. Whereas the man who just loved his wife to bits was starving, not just from lack of sex, but from lack of affection. So in our first session, we talked about why that was. You see, this woman wasn't good at giving cuddles or hugs or pats on the arm or snuggling up, watching a TV show on the couch. She basically had been in a family where sex was taboo, where kisses and cuddles were something that was not encouraged, and that's who she thought she was. So their homework after the first session was to start to kiss and cuddle in front of the telly on the couch, kiss and cuddle in front of their teenage kids, and to hold hands when they're going out, and just be a lot more loving in a touchy-feely way. I also asked if she'd ever watched anything that might be erotic or a turn-on for women, and of course the answer was no. So I asked her to go to the nice sex shops. Do you know there's some nice sex shops as well as those horrible porn shops? And they got themselves an erotic DVD, the kind that women like, where there's a story and there's real characters with kind of lives. And when they came in next session, she said that she'd watched this erotic DVD with her husband, and in fact it did turn her on, and that they had some good sex. So things were starting to move in the right way. I also asked her to go to bed naked. She was one of these women, I call it good girl-itis. She'd always gone to bed wearing full-on jammies or a nightie. So I said, just give yourself the chance to be naked with your husband, who of course was also naked, and hold each other and stroke each other and see what might happen. And of course she said, but what if I get cold afterwards? And I said, well, that's all right. That's when you can put your jammies or your nightie back on. Now, another thing which was quite overwhelming for her was that I asked her to get herself a vibrator. and so she did, and it was about the fourth session that they came in together, holding hands and talking in their sign language, talking very excitedly about the news that they had for Dr. Jan. And can you imagine how the interpreter felt when she said, you know, she wants to tell you that she had an orgasm with the vibrator. So it was a fantastic outcome. I felt so rewarded to be able to help these people communicate with somebody that they could trust. And even though they had to, you know, open up and tell the interpreter all their vulnerabilities about sex and their lives together, we still had a great outcome. They were really, really happy, and I felt like, you know, I could really literally pat myself on the back for engaging with something that was new and learning to be comfortable with it. So if you've got any issues in your sex life, and you don't have to be deaf, please, why don't you have a look at my website, www.sex-therapy.com.au, or just call us here in Melbourne, Australia, 6103 9419 3010. And may I wish you the very best sensational sex life that you deserve.